All right, what is up, you heathens and demons, you blasphemers, you sinners and saints? Welcome back to Nakasuchi, and tonight we have a good conversation. Ali is our moderator. What's up, Ali?
Hey, Naka. So we're going to be talking tonight about toxicity in the atheist community. And the object, as I've understood it, is we're not necessarily looking at the actions of any one individual, though if that does come up, it'll be tried to be discussed in a more generalized way. We're talking more about things like herd mentality or ganging up on people when they come forward in the atheist community with differing opinions, that sort of thing. Like, especially when it comes to anti-theism, because that's where a number of us have experienced these issues. So, there are 5 of us here tonight, in addition to our wonderful host. So I will start from left to right on my screen, and it looks like with this new program that Naka's using, everybody's in the same order. So I'll start with the person to my right, which is Callan.
Hi, I'm Callan. I'm known for getting abused by atheists on Twitter. And yeah, it's a huge problem within the community. Like, I'll even get transphobic slurs brought up to me as if that has something to do with my theism when arguing.
You're also the co-host on Polyology with me and 3 other people.
That I am.
All right, so the second person is our lovely moderator from the Discord, Witch, also known as What the Craft.
Hi, I'm Witch. My husband, who is an atheist, and I have a small channel focusing on finding common ground between pagans and atheists. As far as the topic for tonight, I find the hard anti-theism and the labeling of religious beliefs as mental illness part of the problem with the toxic community.
Okay, so John Peterson, one of my fellow moderators and one of our guests for tonight.
Hello, everybody. I am interested to join this conversation and hear what everybody has to say. I would just basically echo what Witch had to say, as far as something that I in the past was guilty of myself, of accusing theists of being delusional and things like that because they believe in God. And if you went and looked at some comments of mine, maybe a year and a half ago, 2 years ago, you would have labeled me as an anti-theist. And much like Nakasuchi, I have gotten away from that. And this should be a good discussion tonight.
Real quick, I've got to break in because I'm seeing something in the chat. No offense, I did do the moderator purge. It is strictly pretty much moderators on my Discord. We are going to be looking at moderators going forward, but yes, we're really trying hard to get rid of a sea of blue. So no offense, anybody. I have been talking about this for a while. It is not any particular person, but I did do the purge. Continue. I'm sorry.
Modpocalypse has been upon us. All right, so now we have...
me. I'm going to confirm the conspiracy in the chat. I am behind everybody losing the wrenches.
Yep, it's totally
this
Shay's
was my
fault.
decision.
You just need to blame her. Like, everybody needs to blame her. Like, 100% all at once right now.
This was 100% my decision. I looked at the chat one night and I had 100% blues.
Nope,
every
Naka.
comment.
Nope, Naka, you don't get to argue with me. Mod is God. It's Shay's fault. She took responsibility.
True that.
Cue the torch and pitchforks.
It's my fault. I started the purge. I'm the one with the axe.
I took orders from Callan.
Exactly.
All right. So speaking of which, Shay, also known as Atheist Rationale, has joined us, and she is the final guest tonight.
So, toxicity in the atheist community. First off, I want to say that the toxicity, at least from what I've seen, is mostly centered around certain people's fan bases. I'm not going to mention any names. But I will say, certain communities, like the ones that Cirrus have built or Mr. Atheist have built, have been mostly positive overall. However, you'll find in some of the more anti-theistic atheists a lot of toxicity. People that'll say, anybody with any sort of theistic belief is, mentally ill. They're also tend to be pretty transphobic. which is another thing that you'll end up seeing on Twitter a lot, honestly. Yep. Yeah, that's basically it. Yeah. I'll leave off there.
All right, so it looks like we're mostly in agreement, which means I guess we're mostly going to be talking about specific instances. And as I was kind of joking in the earlier chat, Nakasuchi is a much better YouTuber than the Raging Atheist was, and the Raging Atheist is the only name that we're allowed to call out tonight, because he happened to want to address some of the things that he's done in the past.
Yeah, I'm really interested in this conversation that we're going to have tonight. But I would like to ask, let's be lenient on timing people out. I understand that people are going to be upset that I took away wrenches. Reese, I would love to have a round 2 with you and Ocean. I actually think Ocean would really want to do that. Like I said, taking the wrenches was no. We discussed this, and I have been thinking about this for a while. So let's be lenient. Let's allow people to express their frustrations. Let's not time them out, please, because I understood that this was going to happen, and I want them to feel free, because it really isn't anything personal. This was just something I decided to do for the channel, for the live chats. And moving forward, as Discord and the channel grows, we are going to actually look at people we think that can moderate the chats in the way that we want. And Reese actually is probably somebody that I would consider, depending upon our conversations going forward, because it was a very powerful conversation that we had in my Discord. So I just really want to, like, let's be lenient when it comes to people, being a little frustrated about the wrenches, because I totally understand it. But I just really want to reiterate that it is something that I've been talking about for quite a while, and it's no disrespect intended. We're just kind of starting over. I do have content creators that I kept wrenches, and a couple very, very, very close people to me. But outside of that, we're starting fresh. And moving forward, it's going to be about the moderation that we want, because I want to have a civil Discord moving forward. And I want to be able to get Christians and other people in here. So, I mean, this is all pretty much part of the rebrand. And I'm sorry if you're offended, but I have given fair warning up to this point. I mean, I couldn't have done it any better, I don't think. And I actually put off taking the wrenches away far longer than I should have. So I'm sorry, but that's where we're at with that. But yeah, I'm really looking forward to this conversation. Allie's our moderator, and let's get this thing rolling.
Okay, so like I said, you at the very beginning, since it seems like in terms of opening statements, we're all kind of in agreement, I guess that means the best way to start is to kind of share some personal experiences. And I know that at least 2 of the people here, the one of which happens to be going by a different name than when he was behaving in this way, the other one mentioned this at the beginning, have had some experience with being that toxic person and the mindset that comes from. So I think that'd be a great place to start if either of you wants to share.
Well, I know, yes, and I would, and let me get out of here because I've been showing comments and playing with this new program. It's so sweet. It's so fucking sweet.
Put your toys away, Naka.
I know, right? I think I was probably one of the more toxic atheists on YouTube. I was very, very toxic. I had a lot of anger. I had a lot of rage. I raged at people that I now regret raging at. I had some people reach out to me and be open. That Christian vlogger, people are like, how can you be friends with him when he has these ideas? And I'm like, because he's a human being and he reached out to me. Most Christians aren't that. And I'm going to appreciate that. And I'm going to open this dialogue with this dude. Right. So, I've been changed by all the different people I've met. I was changed when I met John, and I started letting other people come on my channel. And AR, I think AR and Cirrus might have actually been the first 2 guests that I had on my channel.
Cirrus is an amazing guy.
Yeah, and I've just been changed so much, and I'm really trying to refocus on not just having all this anger at because I totally mistook the mistreatment I had by Christians and place that on theism itself.
You were a baby alligator.
Yeah. We were talking about this earlier. I would snap at everything, and I would be just.
You would do death rolls and everything.
I would be itching to bite, right? So, this is something that I'm very interested in because I am evolving. I am changing. I am not liking some of the things that I'm seeing from the community, and I don't want to get into specifics, but I want to talk about that toxicity because I had it. It was like coursing through my fucking veins, and luckily, I met the right people. I met the people that could really like just open my mind, AR and John and Callan and Ali and Witch. But outside of that, like Ocean and Cirrus and fucking just so many people that I can no longer just look at God belief and be like, oh, that's an illness. And so many atheists say shit like that. I said shit like that. And we need to address it if we're going to actually move on. And we need atheists talking about it. Right now, we have a split room. We have 3 atheists. We have 3 polytheists. If I could have one more, I'm not sure if I could, I would invite a Christian on. But with this new program, I think 6 is the limit right now.
It is.
But I'm really interested in this conversation.
Yeah, I mean, I don't know. I wasn't sure how to read that, whether it was 6 total or 6 host plus 6. But yeah.
We'll be testing this as we move forward.
Yeah. Yeah, I just, like I alluded to when I was introduced, if you went back and you looked at some of my interactions with theists, a year and a half, 2 years ago on YouTube, or maybe even as recent as a year ago, I had that toxicity too, where a conversation might start out, as a legitimate back and forth, but then the further into it we got, the further that we disagreed, then I would inevitably, bring up the fact that, well, you believe in an imaginary, you have an imaginary friend in the sky, or, some pejorative comment like that, instead of trying to have, a continued serious conversation. I was just looking at the chat a few minutes ago. I brought this up in a stream the other day. Might have been right here on this channel. Dragnot Silvas was in the comment section there, and me and him had a conversation a while back where he said, yeah, I mean, if you disagree with somebody, or if somebody says something that in your heart isn't true, or that you disagree with, or if they make some mistake, as far as like philosophical terminology or whatever, where you can go at them hard and make them look like an idiot, but then that'll just stop the conversation, so and I'm very much paraphrasing what he said. I'm sure I'm not saying it as eloquently as he did when we were having the conversation, but you're just better off in finding common ground, in finding common terminology. I mean, if somebody's using a term differently than you would use it, well, then you just need to find out how it is they're using it so that the conversation can go on. And, the idea that somebody who believes in God is delusional actually, at this point in my life now, offends me, and I've called people out in comment sections on it, and the reason it offends me, because as I've shared before, everybody in my sphere of influence, everybody that I know and love in the real world, they are theists and Christian theists. Okay, so if I'm going to say that because you believe in God you are delusional, then I am saying that about all the people that I love, and that's just that's wrong, because it was easy for me to make that accusation to faceless people in comment sections, but then when I really analyzed my putting that idea forward, then I had to admit to myself, wait a minute, are you saying that your mother is delusional? Are you saying that your sister is delusional? So start going from that starting point, I had to, really analyze how I thought about it. And I came to a different understanding that, just because someone believes in God, it's not a delusional belief. Now, within the group of people that are theists, and it's just because of, because any individual can have a bad idea, any individual can, suffer from certain things. That's not to say that all ideas theists have are good ideas. As we know, NIFB and groups like that have some very toxic ideas. But the idea to just out of hand disregard someone because they have a God belief is it's wrong. And I was wrong for holding that belief in the past.
I agree wholeheartedly. Like I feel
Well
bad.
said, John.
And I want other people to get in, but like I always told people that just hated gay people. I'm not going to associate with them. I'm like, you're like totally depriving yourself of relationships that might change your life forever, right? And I never applied that to myself when it came to theists. I was so toxic. I did not want theists in my hemisphere. I wanted them as far away, and I pushed every theist in my life out as far as I could. And it's just like, I don't want to be that anymore. And since I've started letting theists come back into my life, and theists that actually have sound philosophical reasonings behind their belief, and they've been able to convince me that yes, that premise I gave, that I don't know, I just know that Abrahamic God is shit. That's the premise that I stand my ground on. And I'm so willing to be open to human beings that are going to be decent fucking human beings. I don't care about their belief systems when it comes to a God. And actually, some of them, from what I found, are really fucking cool, and it actually makes them better human beings. That wasn't my experience with Abrahamics. And I think too many atheists apply their experiences with Abrahamics and place that on other theists that don't deserve it. But please, everybody else jump in.
So, I wanted to answer one quick question from the chat because it's kind of turning into a storm. Callan, if you want to join in with this, somebody asked about the Euthyphro dilemma for those of us that are polytheists in the chat.
Oh,
I don't believe my gods are omnipotent, so I don't necessarily have a problem saying my gods support it because it is good. Basically, my gods say to do good and they love good because it is good, because I don't believe my gods are fully omnipotent. So I don't have necessarily a problem. I don't subscribe to divine command theory.
I would say
Neither do I.
a major problem that I see in the atheist community is how atheists react to polytheists. So yes, please, Callan, jump in, because you take a lot of this shit.
And I'm new to getting into all of this and having to learn the arguments and everything. So do you mind walking me through what the dilemma is? I'm
not
as familiar
I
with the philosophy as y'all are.
Basically, the idea is if God is the source of morality, then it's either arbitrary or it's his nature. If it's his nature, then it's something separate.
Well, Euthyphro basically brought up to, I believe it was Socrates, but I might be wrong. That do the gods love good because it is good, or is it good because it is beloved by the gods?
Yeah,
that is Euthyphro's dilemma. Basically, it questions divine command theory, this idea that good things only exist because the gods say it's good. Which is something that monotheism, like particularly the Abrahamics, very strongly believe in. Because it questions omnipotence of deities if you state that gods love good because it is good, because that means that good is somehow objective from the gods. Or separate, I guess, from the gods.
That doesn't seem like it would apply to the way I view my beliefs.
Yeah, because I don't ground morality in deity. I ground it actually in virtue and human functioning, which is Aristotelian. So I don't view it as a problem at all.
I wouldn't say that I get my morality views from deity.
Neither do I, really. My moral views are actually philosophical in nature. So, like, I talk frequently about being a Stoic. I'm somewhere between a Stoic and an Aristotelian when it comes to ethics. Callan and I have had extensive discussions on this. I agree with the Stoics on most things. I agree with Aristotle on a few others, and I think that the two together make up a good map for my life, but none of those are entirely grounded in the gods themselves or in the gods commanding to do something specifically.
Right.
I want to
That's
interject real quick. Immutable Destiny added me. He says that's not the core of the dilemma. I totally don't want to mispronounce that because I'm stupid today. Been working all day. It's more the issue of why a sufficiently powerful being create/allow the presence of evil unnecessarily. So
No, 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 no.
No, that's the problem.
No,
with-
that's
That's the
not.
problem
That's
with
the
evil.
problem
with
of it.
evil.
Yeah, that's the problem of evil. Euthyphro's dilemma is specifically about, the question exactly has to do with the word piety in Greek. Are the pious loved by the gods because, or is the pious actions loved by the gods because it is pious, or is it pious because it's loved by the gods?
Right.
Like, that is the original question directly. The
Right,
problem of evil is an entirely different issue.
Well, in simpler terms, it's. And I because I brought it up because I wanted to get it right up on my phone here, but there's a chart here. And the way it's worded here is God loves X because it is good, or X is good because God loves it. So
Yeah.
it's the juxtaposition between those two.
Mm-hmm.
Well, and the answer is that because most polytheists don't subscribe to divine command theory, it's not really a question that's going to trip us up all that much.
Yeah, no. It's just like the problem of evil. We don't have a problem with evil either. There are not gods that are not good.
Now, I will say that there are some polytheists that will answer the question, things are good because they are beloved by the gods, because of their particular philosophy and how they view them. But that's not all polytheists. And unfortunately, when you ask, what do all polytheists think about anything? Well, Ocean's most recent video kind of did a very good job of answering, you can't answer that question, because most of us don't agree.
which is a brilliant,
Also,
video.
I'm noticing a pattern in the chat with this guy named Blood Moon Wolf. He seems to be what I call an atheofundy, and these tend to be the more toxic atheists in the community that tend to base their epistemology off of verificationalism. And I tend to get almost exclusively all the toxic atheists that I run across tend to be these kinds of atheists. They just come up, they demand evidence. You say, "Oh, here's my evidence. It's anecdotal, so you don't have to accept it." And they're like, "Well, that's not good enough." At that point, they're basically proselytizing. They're acting just like Christians.
Well, I mean, and that does create a problem for people, and because an individual can have an experience, and it is all they need to form a belief. But also, if it is an anecdotal thing, it's a personal experience, a revelatory experience, you can't very well share it with other people other than to tell them about it. So at that point, it becomes I guess it becomes a trust issue. Do I trust this person enough to take what they say as the truth, and do I respect this person enough to know that they're not feeding me a line of shit, and like you said, certain people hear the personal anecdotal experiences, and then that's their immediate response. That was my immediate response in the past as well. Well, that's not good enough. Show me some tangible evidence, and it just doesn't work that way. I mean, so.
And a lot of the, I see atheists that are part of toxic community or have that hard anti-theist line that, like, for me, my personal experiences, I'm not going to deny that there could be other explanations for them, right? So
Well,
because I know that, I have no invested interest in sharing those experiences with someone else to attempt to get them to believe what I believe.
Well,
And
here's
so
the
if an atheist approaches me with, well, we have to be able to test it or I don't believe you, my response is, cool, don't believe me. It doesn't affect my beliefs in any way or one way or another if you don't believe me.
Well, here's the other thing also. Like, I know for me, as an animist, reinterpreting an experience as natural does literally nothing. Because I still hold that the event that said happened had some sort of spirit, so to speak, to it. So, like, for example, if a bolt of lightning hits and I say, oh, it's a sign of Thor, and you go through and you explain it after, it's like, yeah, okay, it's still Thor.
Right. Like you've figured
Or
out how it
Zeus.
works, but that doesn't take
That
away
doesn't mean that
from
there's
the
not a
meaning.
supernatural component to it,
Right.
especially from an animistic perspective.
Right.
Well, yeah, and there seems to be this herd mentality that I would hope that like atheists would try to escape, right? So like if a segment of the community is suddenly up in fucking outrage, then they're gonna just go at you and just be brutal as fuck. And I would hope that we would be more compassionate than that. I would hope that like not every fucking atheist was the raging atheist out there. And I think that this goes really towards the normalizing of atheism. How can we normalize atheism if we're attacking nonstop? If we're just fucking relentless with it? It to me it's a fine balance of calling out bad ideas against like just shunning everything and saying like, oh, this God belief is a mental illness. And you know, like the three pagans that are in this room tonight are really, really good friends to me. I was the raging atheist. They didn't have to be. They chose to be. And I think that speaks volumes.
Well, besides that, like, one of the biggest things that Christians or, like, that atheists have a problem with Christians is that Christians are constantly trying to proselytize. They're trying to convert people to their belief. If you're going to continuously start fights with people who hold beliefs but are in no way attempting to convert you, then how is that any different than the proselytization that you are attacking for Christians? The vast majority of polytheists, we're not trying to convince you to our POV. The vast majority of us are just trying to show you that our POV is not completely irrational, that there is a basis for it, and that our standards for certain things may be different than yours. And it's okay for us to disagree. But if you come at us with insults, like what's been going on in the chat, which, by the way, Hayward, if you do that again, you are going to get banned. And if you get banned by me, you don't get to come back. So you've got your 5 minutes to think about it. But like, if you guys want to have a discussion on this, we're happy to have a discussion on it because we're seeing this exact behavior that we're talking about with toxicity in the community in our chat tonight.
Yeah,
Also,
Blood Moon Wall.
If I could jump in on that, I just want to comment too about, you know, and Nakasuchi alluded to this earlier, the discussion that was had in his Discord a few nights ago, and I had not looked at it this way until you and Ocean had brought it up, that when you do, you know, go after someone's beliefs like that, you know, by saying, oh, well, that's just delusional, or, you know, that evidence isn't good enough, you know, for you to have that belief, it does boil down to proselytizing. And I never looked at it that way until Ocean and I believe you, Allie, and a couple other people in that chat we had brought it up, that if you're going to attack someone's beliefs like that, you know, as far as to say that they're delusional or that their thinking is all wrong, then you are basically telling them you need to change your beliefs, and that's proselytizing.
Mm-hmm. Atheist evangelism is a real thing. We're seeing it right here in this chat, actually.
Yeah,
especially with Blood Wolf Moon right here, who I'm tempted to, on the one hand, I'm tempted to just mute him, but on the other, he's proving my point so perfectly for me. I don't think I could get a better example here than this.
Well, to be fair, like, I haven't seen him outright insult somebody, so he's disagreeing, but he's not outright insulting us. That's why Hayward got in trouble, was because he was doing that. Also, a reminder, the R word is absolutely a slur. Do not use it in our chat. This is your final warning. Some of you guys are getting used to the new rules. Just saying.
Yeah.
About to bring that person
I'm
up.
working on it with my iterations of it. You know, like the fuck up. You know what? Y'all know my iterations. AR, you've been quiet. Would you like to jump in?
There is actually one topic that I was thinking about bringing up, and that is like the anger that kind of comes out of like new atheists, especially when they're like deconverting from Christianity. And I feel like this might be a source of a lot of the toxicity. Of course, a lot of it also stems
AR,
from,
you're
like,
having mic issues. You might want to adjust where you are with your mic.
I hear you, but yeah, you are kind of going up and down. AR.
How about now? I turn my gain up a little bit.
Better. Yeah.
Okay. I guess the gain needs to go up when I'm on StreamYard. But anyways, like I was saying, like when people deconvert out of Christianity, especially, they sometimes are met with a lot of anger because they feel like they've been lied to on like a lot of things. And honestly, I was kind of there when I was first coming out of Christianity. I had preachers and stuff tell me that men had like one less rib than like women, for instance, even though that's not even the case. And it was also coming from a time when like slurs like the R word were kind of popular. And I won't lie, like when I was like 14 years old, something that I used a lot, especially because of the anger that I had towards like Christians. Started watching people like The Amazing Atheist. And one of the reasons why I watched him is because he was one of the few content creators at the time that seemed like they were very LGBTQ plus friendly. Like they were openly bi and sex positive in a way, even though it involved bananas. That's a whole other story in it on its own. But
yeah, I mean, there's a lot of
when-
that anger actually when somebody first becomes a polytheist sometimes too. Like you can still feel the hurt that you had from being a part of that oppressive religion.
Well, and we're seeing it in the chat. I just really want to reiterate, like my mods, Callan, Ali, AR, John. I mean, everybody that's in this chat right now are mods, right? So, seriously, like, have a civil discourse. But coming into the chat and bringing toxicity, you really are proving the point. And beyond that, like, seriously, get over yourselves. Like obviously my subs have stopped, and there's going to be a certain element of atheists that are no longer going to watch me. You guys, I have appreciated your support up to this point, but I'm going in a different direction. This might not be the fucking channel for you. You know what? That's something I just really can't control. That's up to you. But we're going to have civil discourse here, and we're going to have fucking conversation, and we're going to talk about the toxicity I'm seeing in the chat right now. Seriously. I mean, I have 4 thumbs down. I don't see any Christians. These are atheists getting pissed off because we're actually having a conversation about atheists being somewhat like fucking Christians. And guess what? I'm not that atheist. If I see myself being that, I'm going to fucking change it. And if you can't, I'm sorry for you. But go ahead, AR.
Now, I do want to preface the fact that like Mr. Atheist, The Amazing Atheist isn't like that anymore. He's actually just recently like posted this very transphobic video over, attacking like non-binary people. And honestly, yeah, I know. I said I wouldn't name any names. I end up naming one. I apologize. Anyways, where I was trying to go with this is oftentimes you'll find like these new atheists will end up following these content creators. And the more that those content creators fall down this like hole of toxicity, the more it festers inside them and kind of grows. And then if you talk to a lot of these like very strict anti-theists, oftentimes you'll find out that that's exactly where they started. It took me a long time to like grow up out of it. Honestly, a couple of months after like I started YouTube, I finally started seeing the light and like how toxic a lot of segments of this atheist community is. And honestly, I have like people like Surus and
sorry, AR.
I'm
having
they
fun.
they go by
Stupid
objectively
horror energy makes me
subjective
laugh
now,
every
and
time.
people. I'm sorry, what?
I'm sorry, I'm having fun with the chat. Stupid horror energy just makes me laugh.
Yeah.
I
She's great.
love her.
Stupid horror energies in the house. I love saying that, just phrase entirely, because people think it's not a person. That's
Yeah, I
a
always,
horrible
I, always,
thing.
I always feel uncomfortable saying that for some reason.
I agreed. um, but yeah, I think I basically nailed down the points that I was trying to say. It could be like its own form of like stochastic terrorism. The more you like watch these content creators, the more like toxic your personality could end up being. And you got to really like branch out, get different perspectives. You'll realize that like not all theists are like bad people. We have some great people in the chat right now: Callan, Witch, Aliakai. These people aren't mentally ill like some of those other content creators would like have you believe. And besides the point, that's not even the medical definition of like what constitutes as a mental illness. But that's a whole other thing. And
Well, I think that is
yeah.
an important point to bring up, though, because like when you use mental illness as an attack, it stigmatizes mental illness ultimately,
yeah,
right?
it does.
Ocean is asking a question in the chat. He added all of us.
Right. So I can
Yeah, go
actually
ahead, Callan.
elaborate on this. Like I remember one time I got into a conversation and the guy even refused to say that to acknowledge that I was pagan. He just painted all religions with one broad stroke and then started complaining about how I believed in the virgin birth and that it was illogical and all this other stuff. And it's like, yeah, I can agree with that. What's your freaking point? And then he proceeded like to call me mentally ill, delusional, and another word which I'm not going to say on stream.
Callan gets the most shit that I've ever seen from anybody.
She really does. So
It's because she's willing to engage it in part too. Like she, much like to a certain degree, Ocean and I is willing to actually, get involved. And if the person looks like they might be a good faith actor, get in there, get your hands dirty, right?
Hey, I got a sidebar question just real quick for any of the polytheists in the room. In polytheism, are there any of the gods that were the result of a virgin birth?
Well, I mean, in one particular version of the Greek creation myth, Nyx emerged from chaos, which we talked a little bit about that night in the Reese conversation that Naka sort of mentioned. Chaos it is not itself a deity. You can't say a heck of a lot about it other than that it is. So technically, yeah. Also, Athena was said to have emerged from Zeus's head because he ate her mother. But I mean, those myths are not necessarily meant to be taken literally. So that idea of a virgin birth is one that, like, it's not really something we'd have to argue about. Like, the myths are more stories about humanity and about our experiences of what we, understand of the divine than they are necessarily about literal things that happened or about the divine themselves.
And, like, can we even think of liberal Christians that are willing to say that about the Bible, honestly?
Also, as for the mythos I tend to operate in, I mean, no, we literally have a giant who rubs his legs together to produce people. One of the legs is is male, the other is like female. So, not that I can think of off the top of my head.
So coming back to the question about kind of personal experiences with atheist toxicity, one of the ones that I can talk about fairly recently is when I first came into a particular Discord server run by one of my friends here in the community. The absolute second I stepped in and mentioned that I was a polytheist, I was immediately challenged to a debate and hounded until I gave a response as to why I believed what I believed. And the person tried to challenge me on, do you believe there's an objective reality? And a whole number of questions that I knew how to answer. But at the time, I was telling them, I'm joining here to have a conversation about, like, general things. It's early in the morning. I don't need to defend my beliefs to you. But things like that can kind of be obnoxious.
It's like atheists believe that we owe them an answer to this question, which we don't. Unless we're trying to proselytize, which we actually tend to do the reverse. we'd sooner shove you away from our traditions than
Yeah.
proselytize you.
And-
In a lot
and
of
I can speak
cases.
to this, Calvin. Like as an atheist, I demanded answers, right? And if I didn't get those answers, I would get pissed off and I would fucking rage. And if I didn't get the answers I wanted to hear, I would get pissed off and I would fucking rage. And that's the whole point of this conversation here is I was the raging atheist. I might have been. I was a fucking edgelord for a good year at least before I started to moderate myself. And I just said whatever came to my mind. And I think a lot of atheists do that shit. And then we just get backed into the corner trying to back up the fucked up claim we made. And we're not willing to stop and look at ourselves and say, hey, I'm wrong. Because we're atheists. We're right about fucking everything, right? And we got to get beyond that shit. We got to be willing to say, no, I'm not right here. Let me talk to people that might know more than myself.
So, Witch actually didn't get a chance to answer the question that was posed to all of us. So, Witch, do you have an answer to Ocean's question?
Actually, I think it was this past week on Twitter. I had an atheist basically approaching me with the type of arguments they go at Christians with, which I'm not Christian, so they weren't getting the answers that they wanted. It ended up devolving to the point that they went to our channel, posted a link to one of our videos, which was kind of cool, like thanks for the free advertising, but did it to insult my looks and my body type. And that's a typical interaction, is if I'm not giving the responses that they're used to getting when they present these arguments to Christians, it devolves into insults and name calling. And
This happens with Callan a lot too.
If you start going to like attack somebody's like appearance or like start calling them names, you already lost the argument. Why
start calling them or start using transphobic terms. Yeah, you've really, at that point, you're beyond the pale in terms of like loss. Like, yeah, the amount of respect that I have for you is getting close to the same amount of respect I have for colonizers to begin with, which is absolutely none.
Yeah, at that point, I just stopped engaging because there's no point. If you're going to that place and assuming that that's legitimate arguments, there's no point in continuing to engage there.
Well, and like again, the biggest thing about the vast majority of polytheists that I've met is we are not actively trying to convert you. I don't care that you're not convinced that my religion is real. I just want you to shut your face and stop trying to tell me it's not real, because I believe it is. And my belief is doing absolutely nothing to affect your life. That's kind of the point. And like Callan and Witch and I and, you know, a number of other polytheists have all dealt with this, where a number of atheists, our existence seems to offend you in the same way that the existence of gay people seems to offend the NIFB. And I don't understand why.
It's not just that, it's also that a lot of these atheists seem to think that they have something new that we haven't heard before.
Oh yeah, like well, explain objective reality. Show me this. The big one is show me this directly. Like show me how like you can objectively prove. All right, so do we need to go down this particular rabbit hole? Like, do I need to show you how you can't even experience objective reality? You're arguing that my brain firings are, you know, that they're unreliable, but so are yours. If you put your hand on a hot stove, or if you're looking at your computer screen right now, your brain, you're not experiencing that directly. You're experiencing neurochemical signals that are being sent to your brain, and your brain is what's giving you that feedback. Ultimately, you're not directly experiencing anything. You don't know that your experiences are any more real than my experiences with the divine, and those brain firings are identical whether you're delusional or not.
And Ali just made a huge point that I think a lot of the toxic atheist community doesn't get. We freaking study. We read anything we can get our hands on. We study our beliefs. We pay attention. We're not just spoon-fed beliefs, and we don't rely on a single book. We vet sources. We It's a years and years and years process of study that we do. So you're not coming up against a Christian that's just been spoon fed the Bible since the day they were born. So it's a completely different type of discussion or debate that you're going to engage in. And the most vocal of the toxic community aren't prepped for that type of debate. They're prepped to slam dunk the easy Christians that most of the time haven't even read their own Bible.
The easy SJs.
We also have a particular system for determining whether or not our divine experiences can in any way apply to larger practice. And Callan, like, which do you guys want to go over UPG, SPG, VPG a little bit? Because
I was going to ask you to do that actually because you alluded to it earlier. Yeah.
So UPG is unverified personal gnosis. So let's say I have Thor come to me in a dream, and he comes to me bearing his hammer, and somehow fertility is brought into it. And so now Thor has a fertility aspect, which he actually may already have. But we'll put that to the side.
So
That
we'll
would
say
be
you've never heard of
UPG.
that you've never heard of that fertility aspect, let's say, but you get a hint of it from symbolism in this dream.
Yeah, and so I have that at that moment it is UPG. That is, it is unverified personal gnosis. I had an unverified personal experience of the god, and nobody else has. Now, let's say I go and take this to a heathen group, and they come around and they say that they've also had this dream of unverified personal gnosis. Well, then it becomes SPG, so shared personal gnosis. And then let's say we go and we look at the mythos and the evidence for practices and how Thor was perceived, and we find that there is a fertility aspect. At that point, it becomes verified personal gnosis. And verified personal gnosis is basically the highest level of knowledge you can get when it comes to divine and the practices.
It's specifically either borne out by scholarly or historical sources, which one could argue are effectively one and the same.
Yeah.
Once we finish with this part of the conversation, I want to get to something that Ocean said, but please continue because this is fascinating.
So basically, we don't just immediately take it instantly on faith when we have an experience with a particular god. There is a segment of the community that says that you may have an experience with a particular deity, but not be able to properly interpret it. And that's part of what UPG, SPG, and VPG ultimately does. Now, is that going to be convincing and objective enough for, or even is that going to be convincing and proof enough for, somebody who's entirely based their philosophy on materialism? No, and we wouldn't expect it to be. But within our own circles, this is as close to the scientific method as one can get when dealing with the divine. And we do share this information amongst ourselves and have these discussions within the community, at least those of us that are members of the community.
I came into atheism thinking I had sound historical evidence that human beings' predetermined state was atheism. I have been somewhat convinced otherwise by history itself. And I think if people aren't going to allow themselves to be open to what they're actually seeing, they're just going to be just bent on their preconceived notions of what they thought they thunk, then we're in big trouble. But yeah, please step in. I do want to get, because Ocean really brings up a good point that I do want to talk about, but I don't want to cut this conversation short.
I do want to say something very quick. We're not talking about the atheist community as a whole. We realize that there's a lot of other segments to it that don't exude this sort of toxicity that we're talking about.
Yeah, exactly. Yes.
We're talking about a community, so some of our statements might be sort of generalized. However, please remember we're talking about a specific element to it that sometimes seems to be splintered off under specific fan bases more than it is the community as a whole.
Yeah, I think a good
throw that
segment
out
of
there.
the atheist community are free thinkers and willing to openly think. And I think that and this is kind of going to get to Ocean's question later, so I don't want to like cut off the conversation. But there is this element of either new atheists or atheists that aren't willing to change. And I think if you're not willing to really just keep evolving after you come to those ultimate conclusions, atheists, we have ultimate conclusions, right? Like we overcame everything to get to where we're at. But sometimes those ultimate conclusions aren't fully informed. You have to keep learning. And that's the problem I think a lot of atheists have.
So this is actually a really good place to segue, since we kind of went over the stuff that John had requested that we go over, and we answered Ocean's initial question. So what was the other question that you wanted to bring up, Naka?
All right, so I'm going to put it on the screen right now. He says, at Nakasuchi, some of the worst stuff I've seen is when an atheist leaves atheism to become a polytheist. They get fucking hounded by people that used to be their friends. This is something that I have seen personally, and I think that this is a very, very good example of toxicity in the atheist community.
Hey, here, you know what the most disturbing part of that statement is where it says that used to be their friends. So in that short phrase, that says so much about the people that were around this person that became a polytheist after being an atheist. The idea that, you know, like the people in my life, they know I'm an atheist. They didn't turn their back on me. Okay. You know, if Nakasuchi came to me, you know, somewhere down the line and said, you know, I've really had to rethink my beliefs, and I think that polytheism is the route for me, I wouldn't turn my back on him. You know, so that idea that people that used to be their friends, that seems the most disturbing to me, that someone left atheism to do something else, and then these people turn their backs on that person.
You were never a friend
I
if you were
agree.
no longer a friend. You know.
It's
I mean,
actually-
what is friendship?
It's actually a similar thing to what many atheists experience from Christians when they come out as atheists,
Well,
ironically
I was
enough.
getting ready to.
That's very true.
To ask, how is that not shunning?
Yeah, that's
That's
shunning.
exactly what it is.
It frustrates me because you see the same actions from this part of the community that mirror exactly what they threw a fit about regarding Christianity.
You're exactly right, Witch. I mean, this is the same exact behavior that I railed about in my video, speaking to new atheists coming out into a religious home and getting shunned by their family, shit like that, the suicidal tendencies. Like, are we not trying to be better humans? I mean, wasn't that the point? Wasn't that why we left that Abrahamic bullshit behind, is because we realized it wasn't making us better humans? I mean, maybe it wasn't for all atheists, but that was the point I left it behind. And it was a natural progress. I had a lot of fucking anger. I had a lot of shit that happened in my life that gave me anger towards Christians that I put on everybody else. And it's not even all Christianity. Like, not all Christians are those douchebags that treated me like shit. And that's what we got to realize. We are humans. We make mistakes. Let's be fucking human together.
Well, and not all polytheists are fucking perfect either. I mean, like, we've gone over, there's a polyology video on folkism where they talk about the AFA. And, like, that was prior to me being a co-host, but I'd highly recommend it. Also, what you said there, this is the exact, how is that not shunning? At the risk of sucking Ocean's dick any harder than anybody here already has, he did a really good video on latent Christianity that I think everybody here should go watch in terms of this sort of behavior. I think it does a really good job covering some of the ways in which prior Abrahamic faith can affect the way that your, like, attitude is now subconsciously.
It's hard to argue with Ali's logic.
Yeah, that latent Christianity thing is kind of a problem. I've been noticing it in a couple of areas.
I've been noticing it in
recently.
the chat, actually.
Yes. And atheists, please stop acting like fucking Christians already. I'm begging.
Guys,
Ocean.
John, take a sec. Witch was trying to get a word in edgewise, and she hasn't gotten to talk much.
Well, it's when you're indoctrinated from, the age of an hour old into a religion like Christianity, it takes a long time to even identify all of the crap that was programmed into you to even begin to work on getting that out.
Well, and I mean, on top of it, it's also we live in a hegemonic society as well.
Okay, I have heard you use that word a lot.
Basically, it means that the dominant culture is Christian.
Oh.
Yeah,
Okay.
basically, so Christian hegemony is the fact that, like, Christmas, December 25th, and Easter are both considered bank holidays, whereas something like Yom Kippur or, like, Hanukkah, it might be on the calendar, but it's not legally a required day off for the government.
Ah, okay.
I just got to plug Neil. Neil is going to have Callan. Neil, the 604 Atheist, will have Callan on his show this Wednesday. Tune in, please.
That's
Nice.
me,
Hey,
the nice snake, the snake girl.
So all I was trying to say a minute ago was that Ocean had said in the live chat that most of the polytheists that he knows were former atheists, which I thought was pretty interesting.
Yeah, I'm one of those myself, actually. Like, I was more of an agnostic as well, much like he said later on. But I went from Christian to agnostic to Wiccan, back to agnostic to Hellenic polytheist. And I had multiple experiences with the divine that led me down that path.
I think it might be a natural progression of atheism. I've been thinking about this atheism shit for a long time. So I think that we are naturally like just venomous at first because we had whatever experiences that caused us to question the indoctrination we received as children. So we become venomous, and once those questions aren't answered, we get pissed off, and we kind of lash out. But then spirituality kind of answers a lot of things for us that we never had before. So like I often speak about how I've rejected every religion besides one that rejected me. And that religion, I don't like to call it a religion, but it generally was a very spiritual thing. And you can literally have this idea that everything makes sense, right? And still believe in science and whatever, but it was a rational explanation, and just because I was denied, I gave up on it. I think that the atheists need those we seek that, and we're looking for those answers. And I think that when you actually talk to polytheists that know their shit, and you realize that, hey, this is not what I've ever fucking heard before, this is not the Christianity I grew up around, then it is very appealing. And not only that, there's truth there, right? Like there's truth there. Like, I'm a fucking atheist, and that's not going to change anytime soon, y'all. But there's fucking truth there, and you shouldn't deny it just because, hey, I gave up on Yahweh because he's a douchebag. Seriously, I mean, that's pretty much what it comes down to.
So I want to give AR a chance to chime in there because she hasn't gotten to talk a lot in a while. Do you have anything to say about latent Christianity or sort of these kinds of trends in the community?
And this has been an issue, so we should talk about it, and people in the chat were like, what the fuck is latent Christianity? We should talk about that.
So latent Christianity, to be way oversimplified, are attitudes and like ways of thinking, you could say philosophical thinking effectively, that you carry back with you when you deconvert from Christianity. Things that are so deeply ingrained in your pattern of thought and sometimes your personality, depending on how like heavily you were indoctrinated and how hardcore, like whether or not your Christian sect was a cult. That you don't even necessarily realize you're doing because they've become a part of the, like, so central to how you identify and how you think.
Yeah, there can be a lot of problems that kind of like come out of latent Christianity. There's something I want to talk about, but maybe we'll get into that subject a little bit later.
Well, so like, I'm sorry, I
here.
thought you were passing off.
No, I was just thinking of another subject and talking about it passively through this little segment of conversation that I'm trying to put out there. I tend to take breaks in the middle of speech, and then it seems like I'm done even when I'm not. It happens a lot.
Well, Shay, if you want to put
Anyways.
that in the little private chat on the side so you don't forget it, you're welcome to.
Perfect. Yeah, I'll probably do that after
Eh,
this right now, because I
would
can't
like-
do two things at once.
Speaking of which, I'm just looking
Latent
at all the
Christianity,
latent-
though.
Yeah, I'm looking at a ton of it in the chat right now.
Yeah,
There,
I don't even think atheists realize it because we're so turned off by Christianity that we're like, nope, we don't have none of that shit left. But we fucking do, right? I literally have shit left, and I've been an atheist for 15 fucking years now, and I'm still just getting over shit. I mean, seriously, this is a long process. And if you limit yourself, if you close yourself off from good human beings, that's on you. It ain't on me.
Naka, great point. Let AR talk, please.
so latent
no, I'm sorry.
Christianity, a lot of the problems that I've seen from it, at least recently, is a lot of hate towards like the GRSM community, and sometimes like even self-hatred. I think I experienced a lot of this for years before, like opening up about like myself and stuff.
We call it internalized oppression, yeah.
Oh yeah.
Mm-hmm.
I've noticed a lot of people, myself included, I won't be too shy about this, tend to be a little sexually repressed, and like they'll take their ideas of like what a relationship should be from Christianity even after like they move out of it. They'll be against like homosexual relationships, they'll be against like poly relationships, they'll be...
Don't even get me started on how much shit I've gotten from being poly, like from every demographic, pretty much except for polytheists for the most part.
Yeah. They'll be very like vanilla, I guess you can say, in their thinking. I mean, there's nothing wrong with being vanilla, but if you like go out and start kink shaming, like that's a degenerate practice, even though there's like complete informed consent throughout the whole situation, and you just like take offense to anyone that might have like something slightly different to what you perceive as normal. It makes absolutely no sense to me, but it's definitely something that still exists. Callan would have a lot more experience, at least when it comes to like the transphobic area. I'm sure Leakai, you just said that you've gotten hate for being poly, correct?
Oh yeah, I've gotten a fuck ton of hate for being
right now.
Yeah, I've gotten a fuck ton of hate for being polyamorous, as well as for being a polytheist.
Yeah. Another.
We just call Alakai poly, by the way.
Yeah, I am apparently the ascension of the word poly on polyology because I am poly everything.
Yeah, and
another
this does
thing
become an issue, and atheist, if really seriously, if you have an issue against this, why? Look at yourselves.
Another thing is like the strict like reinforcement of like certain types of gender roles that like some people coming right out of Christianity will stick to like a man must be exactly like this. They need to have short hair. They need to be like working on cars, like run the household, that sort of thing. And the same thing is like obviously for female gender roles is pushed on women as well. And,
Naka, are you trolling Neil? Because it seems like you're trolling Neil.
I am like putting every Neil shit I'm giving Neil a wrench.
I got slightly like distracted by what was on screen right there, but I think I made my point.
I really like Neil. Neil
I mean,
fucking awesome.
Just to speak to, I think if I understand what you talk about, when you say latent Christianity, like say someone comes out of Christianity, but they still hold certain beliefs about, certain segments of society, like they still might believe that being gay is immoral, or they might still feel that women should be subservient and, things like that. And then even little minor things like I'll get called out sometimes by somebody who still believes in God because I'll use the phrase like, oh my God, or something like that.
Which God?
Still, it's still in my head. Yeah. The witch God, the witch God. Yeah.
Oh, which God though? There are two of them.
Which magic god? Like we need to have a discussion here.
I think one of the things that I see most often in the toxic segment of the community is not being able to say I don't know. Not
Yeah,
being
what's
able
up with
to
that?
admit when they don't have the answer, in this drive of having to assert that no, we're wrong and they have the right answer.
And I don't get that because I don't know is like my fallback position for everything.
Yeah, that I think is a form of latent Christianity. You see sometimes the same issues with Christians. One
Yeah,
of the things, though, that I notice a lot with atheists, though, is like this strict adherence and sort of almost kind of like hatred among at least the atheofundies for things like feminism. Like they'll be really
Yes.
anti-feminist, really anti like SJW, when a lot of them don't even know what those like terms even mean. Like feminism isn't a monolith.
Yeah. You're anti-social justice?
Yeah,
I mean,
Like how
I-
fucked up are
how
you?
can you be?
yeah, okay. That means I don't want social equality. I mean,
Essentially.
I'm a fucking Nazi. I'm a Nazi. Hello, everybody.
well,
Come on.
and you mentioned them looking at something like a monolith. They tend to look at paganism as a monolith and expect us all to
So we
have
can
the
cut that
exact same answers, and that ain't possible. Like that ain't gonna happen. We're not all gonna answer the questions in the same exact way.
Well,
Hey,
and I
real-
mean,
real-
even in
real-
Ocean's video, most of the examples he used came from Hellenism, right? Because we don't even agree with each other, like within the same tradition. Like I get into fights with Platonists on occasion.
I'm sorry.
Hey,
I
real
hate to
quick,
cut y'all
real-
off. I just
oh.
love new trolls. I've never seen this fucker before. Cinder, Cinder. In all seriousness, all you atheists have a god. It's the same one. Life requires. You are just in denial. Guess what? If I had a god, it wouldn't be your stupid fucking god. It would be one of their cool gods. So fuck off.
Assuming he's a
I just learned
Christian.
about a new god, Orushume, who is actually the Yoruba god. He's a huge snake, but the snake is a rainbow snake. So all rainbows are Orushume.
Oh, that's a perfect god for you, Callan.
It really, really is. I was
Hey, real
Callan
quick,
is
I just
officially
want
the
real,
rainbow snake incarnate.
just real quick. I just
What?
want to say, shout out to Jim Majors in the live chat. Jim Majors in the house.
Yeah, what's up,
Formerly,
Jim Majors?
formerly the disciple of Kairos.
We have had quite a few viewers tonight. I think this topic might be a bit hot. It's a hot topic, y'all. It's a hot topic.
Well, it didn't hurt that Callan and I decided to share it on Twitter too to try to bring some of our people in.
The real
'Cause
hot
we
topic.
thought
This
it'd
is a
be-
conversation more atheists need to have. Be open to this conversation. Hear criticism. Make yourselves better people.
Well,
Please.
and again, kind of.
I would
coming
like
back
to address Iron Charioteer real quick.
Sure.
Iron Charioteer, the problem is that you're being a jerk to us. You think you have something that we haven't heard before, and you keep pounding these issues into us. No, we've heard all this. If you have a problem with what we are saying tonight, then maybe you should do some self-reflection. Because
Honestly, I'm dying to hear a new argument at some point.
Yeah, because I'm tired of this evangelical atheism that is basically just mere precept and expecting me to bend to its will because it needs to save me from my sins of so-called falsehood. I mean, come on now. How Christian can you get?
Well, and again, I pose the question to anybody in the chat: how does my Callan or Witch's belief in any way affect your life? Given that none of us are trying to proselytize or convince you of it,
Or
like,
please
why do you
convince
feel
me
the
that
need to
any
go
of them
after
are
us?
illogical. Sorry,
I'm
Alex.
sure as heck not gonna try and get anything that I believe written into law to force anybody else to live by it.
Unlike those.
I mean, maybe a
people
few
in
environmental
Alabama.
laws.
I just don't get why atheists would deny.
Oh, Iron
allies.
Charioteer, what the fuck is evangelical atheism? It's exactly what you're displaying right now. It's literally trying to proselytize and convert us to atheism to save us from our perceived sins. We haven't
The way I
committed
see
any
it-
sins.
The way I see it, evangelical atheism or or being an
Fundamentalism.
atheofundy basically means like you nitpick at every little thing like somebody says and like try to convince them they're wrong, and you're just very combative for absolutely no reason. Honestly, like if their belief doesn't affect you, who gives a shit? I don't give a fuck if like people are like into astrology or like into tarot card reading. I know that's kind of separate, but like it can go that direction as well with like the atheo fundies. Like,
I mean, I don't give a fuck if you're a Christian and you're living a decent fucking life and your belief system isn't fucking hurting anybody else. Like seriously, like we as atheists need to stop being fucking Christians. We need to stop being fucking evangelical Christians, pointing the fucking finger at everybody else. Stop this otherism, because that is what this is about, right? We should be standing against that, but we do it at the first opportunity because we're mostly former Christians and it's ingrained in us.
Well,
now
and
if
for
you're
what
like a
it's
medium taking advantage of people that are grieving, that's a whole different story.
Well, and for
I
what
have
it's
a problem
worth,
there.
like on more than one occasion, Callan and I, and Ocean, who's in the chat, and even Witch have been happy to answer questions that are posed in good faith. But there is a distinct difference between asking me how certain things work and challenging and going after me with mostly what appear to be Christian based arguments about absolutism without even fully understanding what my beliefs are. I mean, we kind of have to go all the way back to the beginning when it comes to things like whether or not the gods are omnipotent for some of these questions to even be something that I could start to answer. So again, I'm happy to have a conversation. I'm even happy to have a debate. But when it's obvious that the purpose of the questions that are being answered are specifically to try and gotcha me or Callan or Witch or any other pagan that you're going after, we're going to lose patience with you pretty quick because we've heard it all before.
And I'm known for
And
fighting
my-
back hard.
My thing is, if you come to me and you're asking me an honest question because you're really trying to figure out how and why I believe what I believe, that's fine. But if you approach me like you are entitled to me proving anything to you, or like I owe you an explanation for anything, there are a crap ton of books out there. Go read one.
Atheofundamentalism. That was the word I was looking for, but for some reason couldn't get out of my mouth.
And that's what's being
I just
exhibited in
put-
chat.
I just put my Discord link in the chat. Anybody that wants to come in, I will be in voice chat to continue this conversation after the show. I'm willing to listen to everybody, but I'm going to probably not be very pleasant if you bring toxicity. So come in for a civil discourse, argue, debate. We'll continue.
Hey,
after
Yeah,
the
like
show.
the
Tire and Charity. Hey, man, you know we get along. We go back and forth in chat. I mean, here's the thing. Maybe you can understand it better by forget about the word evangelical. Replace the word that AR just used a moment ago. How about an atheist fundamentalist? Okay, and what they're trying to say to you is that if you're asking a legitimate question, that's one thing. But then if you're asking a question that seems to be, as Eliakai said, like a gotcha, like you're trying to show them up or show them to be,
Irrational.
to be irrational. Yeah, that's a very good word. Then that's where the problem is. So forget about the word evangelical. It's a fundamentalism of atheism where you're trying to convince them that they're wrong and you're right.
Well, and
need to
Ocean's
stop
here,
being
like
assholes.
Naka's here too. Naka, you've seen how Ocean and I and Callan took on somebody who was asking us some of these questions in good faith, and we're happy to engage them with our philosophy. Like we can do so in a respectful setting, but there's a distinct difference between the way you phrase something when you're respectful and when you're not.
Yeah, this
like
isn't
for-
any attempt to convert atheists to polytheism by any means. I'm still, guess what? I'm still an atheist, guys. But guess what? I also have a lot of fucking respect for polytheist. I have respect for some Christians. I did not bring on that Christian vlogger because I don't respect him. I didn't bring him into my fucking home and let him hang out with my daughter because I don't respect him. We got to stop being the douchebags we fight against. That's what this conversation is about.
And as for Iron Charioteer, asking questions whether like polytheism is rational or not, yeah. If you are asking that in good faith, yes, of course it's rational. But when you start asking questions like that, especially given your history, from what I've seen in this chat, no, it's very hard for me to give you the benefit of the doubt. The only reason I even gave you the benefit of the doubt there is because John vouched for you.
Yeah, I can give you the benefit of the doubt, Iron, because you have been with me for fucking ever. And I'm not going to go hard at you because I understand where you're coming from. And I also understand all of the content I put out since you started following me. But this is a growing process. And I'm not asking my anti-theist people that have been here forever to stop being anti-theist because I stopped being anti-theist. What I am asking is just have an open mind to maybe some of our own actions. I looked at myself. I can't expect anybody else to do the same shit. I just can't. I looked at myself. I didn't like what I saw. Maybe other people should try. That is my thing, but I'm not going to shun anybody. That's why I'm saying come into Discord, talk to me. I will be there. I will be there until I have to go to fucking sleep.
Well,
I'm not going to run
for what
away
it's worth,
from.
The final word that I want to put on this before we transition, because AR did in the private chat bring up a really interesting topic in terms of latent Christianity, which was what we were talking about before. I want to let this cool off. I'm going to be in the Discord for a little bit after. One of my partners is flying in tonight, so when he gets home, I'm going to be his, but I should be here after the stream for a little while. If you want to talk to me and you want to engage in good like faith and you want to have a conversation, I am happy to do that. I am not asking to not be criticized. I'm not asking not to be challenged. I am dying for somebody to find a new question or a new way to challenge me that I can address and that I actually have to stop and think heavily in order to be able to answer. Because the problem is all of these questions that I have heard tonight, and especially the way some of them have been phrased, me and Callan and Ocean, and probably to a certain extent Witch, though I haven't seen her be quite as much in the debate side of the community, so let me know Witch if I'm wrong here. Like, all of us on some level have had to address this stuff, and we get them from Christians and atheists. Like, we get it from both sides. It's a constant barrage of you are irrational and there's no way you could ever possibly be, there's no way you could actually believe this. We've been called devil worshippers. We've been called atheists in disguise by Christians. Like, we've been told that because our gods must be idols, and most Christians will never defend what that means.
Same shit we get, and people need to realize it.
Constantly, we're religious minorities.
He said he was trolling his polytheism.
So, I mean, I'm perfectly fine having a discussion, but it needs to come from a place of respect. And if your phrasing tells me that it's not a place of respect, I'm going to give you one chance to fix it. Yeah, because I am not kind to those who are not kind to me.
And everybody coming into my Discord server realize, I have given up control to my moderators because I trust them and I love them. I need moderated. So come in respectful. Or go out,
or I'll kick you
out. but we are willing to have conversation. It is not like when my Discord server first started. Not going to get into that shit. But we are willing to have conversation, and we will give leeway. And I am willing to address any fucking person that wants to come and address me. I wanted to have this conversation tonight because it's important.
So, coming back to latent Christianity, AR, you actually had a topic that you wanted to bring up that we started to touch on before we got distracted by the chat again. So I kind of want to keep us focused, and if y'all want to engage with the chat for at least, say, the next 15 to 20 minutes, let's try to keep things focused on the conversation here. Fair?
Take it away, AR.
Man, so many people in the chat are at arms. We have, this has been... Oh my fucking God.
This is a shining example of everything we've been talking about, man.
Wow.
It's beautiful. You couldn't prove your points at the beginning of this any harder than just watching what's unfolding.
I don't think I could. I mean,
you're muted, AR.
Yeah, she's having mic issues.
Yeah.
Okay.
There you are.
Your mic cuts off, I guess. it also cuts off. I mean, it automatically mutes you in StreamYard. So that's a whole thing. Yeah.
I wonder if I'll be less than 2,000 subscribers after this.
I don't think that'll happen. So honestly, what I wanted to bring up that they were talking about was like racism and anti-feminism in the atheist community. Count probably. Never mind. Anti-feminism, obviously, like, has been kind of really big here on YouTube for the longest time. Even now, although it's kind of lost a lot of ground since 2016. That last statement might actually not totally be true. Honestly, it's still very popular here on YouTube, and even the dumbest reactionaries like No Bullshit have far more like subscribers than the best of BreadTube ContraPoints. That's like a whole thing all in itself. But a lot of people I've noticed, like, they're mostly smaller content creators. They seem to have latched on to this like 2016 mindset. They'll still make videos against like Riley Dennis or the people that.
When you're done, AR, I gotta address some shit in the chat, but go ahead.
Yeah, no problem. Like Riley J. Dennis and like other people that 2016 really had a hard on for. And even then, like I was a bit in the rabbit hole for a little while. Even then, like I was never into that sort of content. It always like struck me as off because it's filled with like these straw man arguments. And often, most of the time, you'll notice that they'll take like one feminist, because we all know that feminism doesn't exist under like some sort of like a monolith structure. They'll take one feminist that does something wrong and then try to exaggerate that person's opinion to the whole of feminism, which in itself is its own fallacy, a hasty generalization. And it doesn't even stop there. There's a lot of racism in the community, like right now. One of the biggest issues like we're facing right now is stochastic terrorism through like white supremacy. Like the El Paso shooter was radicalized through rhetoric that, through this conspiracy theory.
AR, you're specifically addressing those in the reactionary community that call themselves the skeptics, right?
Well, a lot of these skeptics are part of the atheist community as well. The atheist community.
That's what I'm talking about.
Comes hand in hand.
Mm-hmm. Well, I mean, like Cyrus, for example, is somebody who takes that label who isn't one of those. But like he talks about how he struggled when he first started because of how these other people had dragged that term through the mud.
Which is completely understandable, honestly. They stopped calling themselves skeptics after a while. Or stopped calling themselves atheist after a while. Like even The Amazing Atheist labeled himself as like part of the atheist community for a long time, but then as like this anti-feminist like wave hit YouTube, he started calling himself a skeptic channel. And there are a lot of content creators from that whole sphere that have since moved on from it, like Jeff Holiday. He is now very far to the left, including other names like Sofane from Poison the Well. They've distanced themselves from like that whole movement, and it's
this
a good
is
thing,
exactly what I want to address right now. So finish, and then I've got to get to this because I've got to address a friend who might not like what I have to say.
Yeah. And
by the way, Mistress Angelica, one thing, being the mod for the night, people don't get insta-hidden for their first offense. They get, one warning for most of the rules, a timeout, and then a ban. The only insta-bannable offenses are racial slurs. When it comes to like other slurs, like the R word and certain other slurs that we've discussed, that is a timeout the first time with a warning and then a ban. And if you do ban or warn somebody, you need to let them know why. So I'm letting you know that because 2 or 3 times I've timed somebody out and I've then seen them immediately like removed or banned, and that's not the protocol.
All right. Yep. And I totally agree. That is the rules. Anybody that else wants to pipe in real quick before I get into what I'm about to get into?
Iron Charioteer
probably going to lead us to channel plugs and all that shit.
Yeah.
but
Iron. Sorry.
No, you were trying to say it. I just wasn't finished with like my point. I haven't got to the racism aspect of it. I was stuck on anti-feminist.
Oh, okay. I was going to address Iron Charioteer,
Yeah.
who thinks that polytheism contributes to irrational and wishful thinking.
We can talk about that after Callan. I did specifically move the topic to what AR wanted to discuss,
Okay,
so I would
fine.
like to let her finish, and I'd like to talk on that before we
All right,
address
let's
the
let her
chat
finish.
again.
And yeah, I will look
So-
at the chat and I will unhide anybody that did not break the rules.
After like the whole anti-feminism lost some of its ground, people started moving to race realism here in like the atheist and skeptic communities, which is very yikesy. And this is the same ideology that like what's it called, helps contribute to stochastic terrorism. Like we just had the El Paso shooter who
Holy
murdered
what the heck was that?
well over 20 people in a Walmart. Sorry, emotional things kind of get me a little bit, so I get a little when that stuff gets brought up. But getting back to my point, like
Back off from your
There's-
mic a little bit. You're getting muffled again.
okay, back onto my point though, like this whole race realism thing also contributes heavily to like the stochastic terrorism that bred like the El Paso shooter. And it's not just that though, like oftentimes like Stefan Molyneux actually identified as an atheist, and he very well what's it called, contributed to the toxicity that exists right now in the atheist community. Even now in certain segments of the atheist community, not going to name any names, I had a couple of arguments with like people in live discussions, and if you go to their profiles, you'll notice most of the time you can still see like their liked videos playlist, and in a couple of them I saw Lauren Southern's like great replacement video. It's yikesy. It's basically this whole concept of like a white genocide through like either immigration or demographic change or like birth rates. It's completely ridiculous. It's been debunked for going on 30 years now, but for some reason people still latch onto it. Most people call them Nazis because more often than not they actually are, which
Racism and anti-feminism are intricately linked at the moment because of the alt-right movement.
yeah, those are the segments I'm kind of like poking at right now. And
So do we want to open up the floor really quick?
Well, I've got to address this shit. I can't wait anymore, and this pretty much goes exactly to what AR is speaking of right now. So I'm just going to go ahead and show it. Wujita. So can I get clarification on the idea that being anti-social justice makes you a Nazi? Last time I checked, my black ass isn't a Nazi. So first, let me explain some poetic leniency here. When I compare anti-SJWs to Nazis, I'm pretty much saying, like, what the fuck is wrong with you? You're anti-social justice. If you're going to label yourself that, I don't want nothing to fucking do with you. If you're anti-SJW, if you're anti-social justice, you're anti-equality in my book.
yeah,
You labeled
that's
yourself
basically the
that,
whole point.
not fucking me. Go the fuck on if you don't like it.
Yeah.
Exactly.
I actually
That's-
just had like a run-in with people saying that like Trump's rhetoric doesn't in some way contribute to stochastic terrorism on Twitter from like one of
I mean,
the
seriously,
smaller
like,
creators
what
of
the
the atheist
fuck is
community.
wrong with you if you're against social justice?
And also Iron Charioteer calling us irrational, that and saying that it's all just wishful thinking. That right there is what we see as dishonest, disingenuous, and as something I don't want to associate with.
Yeah, I mean, so obviously you're not a fucking Nazi. I was being funny. It's called a joke. Stop being so butthurt. Seriously, I've never had this issue with Wujita. I seriously did not know you was anti-SJW.
Yeah.
I have talked about this in the past. It shouldn't be a surprise. But if you're anti-SJW, guess what that makes you? A fucking SJW. Because you're like all up in arms about, oh my God, they're saying this or they're saying that or they're doing this or they're doing that. And you're being that. It's a fucking paradox you cannot get out of. Stop worrying about it and start fighting for fucking equality. And if you're not doing that, I have no time for you, dog. I just don't.
Well, and
These
when
are
it
the same
comes
people
to
that'll shout that like I hate identity politics, not realizing that all politics revolves around like identity.
Well, I mean, ultimately, like, you've been talking a lot about social justice like, topics on your channel lately. Like, Naka, you've been talking especially about the Native American experience and about Native
Yeah,
American
am I
history.
a fucking SJW because I speak about Native American? Oh, that goddamn genocide. Why is Nakasuchi talking about that? Maybe I need to shut the fuck up. No, I'm not going to shut the fuck up. I mean, it is a fucking dog whistle. If you don't, every time I have talked about anti-SJW shit, I get those frogs. You guys know what I'm talking about.
Oh
You,
god, the
you know
Pepe
what I'm
frogs.
fucking talking about. Those alt-right frogs. So if you don't like that label, don't associate yourself with that fucking label. I'm not going to justify my words to you. I
Well,
won't.
and I've
I
also
do want to
never
say
seen the
something
term
about the
as.
Pepe thing though. Like a lot of
Can I-
leftists are trying to co-opt that back. Like Pig Puncture and Vosh, for instance, they have Pepe's on their like Discords and in their website chats
Those
because they're
motherfuckers
trying to
almost got
take
my
Pepe
channel
back.
taken down because I did some anti-fucking Nazi
Okay,
bullshit.
guys,
Let's move back to the
we need
topic.
we need to move
Yeah,
back to
let's
the
please
topic.
do. But I had to address that. You know, I'm not going to placate you just because I've been friends with you for a while. If
Okay,
you're going to have an issue with
Naka.
the shit I say, come talk to me. Don't fucking put a
Naka.
fucking comment in the chat because you're fucking butt ass sore because I took your ass off of my moderation team because you did not
Naka.
show up for a fucking moderator in one of my rooms and left me out.
Okay,
to fucking
Naka,
dry.
you've got your own personal stuff. You guys can have this conversation outside of this. I'm serious. Like, take a deep breath if you need to. Mod is God. I brought this back. I'm going to ask that we not engage with the chat for at least a few minutes so that we can all get back on topic. This is a topic of toxicity in the atheist community because it's not just about the way that polytheists are attacked. It's often about the way that people who are trying to fight for equal rights can be attacked by certain segments of the community. So I'd like to focus on that on, a more broad level because I think that AR did bring up a good topic and I don't want to see her get built out of getting a chance to actively discuss that since she's kind of, as much as Callan and I are, very much centrally, affected by this.
I mean,
Is that
if
fair,
you're a
Naka?
right-wing fucker, go the fuck on. I don't want you. Bye. Peace.
So-
Matt Bond, Wujita, bye.
Okay, deep breath, Naka. All right, so I would actually love to open up the floor, especially to you, Callan, because you've dealt a lot with the anti-transphobic rhetoric and stuff on Twitter. If you want to share some of those stories, like not just kind of in general terms, but if you want to share some of that stuff, I would love to hear it. And I'm sure that the group would as well, because some of this stuff, it is not rational generally. And I'm going to say this completely, I'm going to say this and I'm willing to back it up. It is not rational to be anti-trans if you are an avowed atheist. Like, there is no theistic argument or non-theistic argument that I have ever seen that justifies being anti-trans.
Yep. I saw this especially when I went on to the non-sex show.
Oh god.
Yes, I did that. I went on
with Sarah Michael, or is it Sarah
with
Michelle?
the tokens. That's
Yeah.
how I'll refer to them. The tokens. Except for Jenny Hoyt. Jenny Hoyt is good. We have some minor disagreements, but I'm not going to throw her under the bus. The others, though, yeah, they were
Jen's
freaking
Corner
tokens.
is same person. I'm pretty sure it is. Just clarifying.
Maybe I'd have to look. But anyhow, yeah, so there is constant purposeful misgendering that I've encountered. People making assumptions that because I'm a theist, I'm therefore lying about being trans. Because apparently those two ideas can't come together somehow. And a lot of times I'll get transphobic slurs like, what was one? I blocked them out, personally. Like, you're just dick fluid or something of that nature.
I've never heard that one before. That's
Yeah, they tend to like to be creative with their insults. And
So somebody in the chat is asking what atheist specifically is making an argument for being anti-trans. Like, again, that's one of the reasons I brought up Twitter.
yeah, tons on Twitter. Like, A lot of them are atheofundies, and I'm sure a lot of them are trolls, but they tend to be right-leaning, from what I've noticed. And
I
they
clarified it in the chat.
Oh, okay, cool.
In response to
Yeah,
Immutable
as far-
Destiny, Alan is out with her pronouns. Like, people deliberately misgender her to try to get under her skin.
Well, I just want to speak to somebody was asking for names to be named, and we decided at the beginning of the conversation we weren't going to get into too many specifics, specific people. We were going to just talk more about general ideas.
Yeah, basically. And yeah, and also with like the pushback I've also received, like a lot of the atheists I've come across in the atheist community really want to base everything on biology. They seem to be biological determinists, and biological determinism is dead. It died a death like, what was it, around like the 70s or even earlier in like the 1800s, when we used to use phrenology in order to determine the likelihood for a person to be a criminal. But they still seem to adhere to this, and because of that, they have a really hard time wrapping their heads around gender and what gender is as an emergent property. And so when I start explaining that and other concepts that are not necessarily like concrete, you get an instant rejection of those concepts as almost sort of like a theistic concept. So, yeah, that's been my experience.
Are you feeling better, Naka? Like, have you had a breath?
I took a breath. I feel
I think
better.
he took a few breaths of some weed, I hope.
Please, I'm about to smoke some weed and cool the fuck down. Please come into my Discord server and address me. Don't come as some right-wing, alt-right, anti-SJW. Fuck, I don't want it.
Well, here's something I want to bring up though about that just real quick. Okay, so yeah, the same as you, Knock. I have a tough time going. Wait a minute, how can you be anti social justice? It makes no sense.
They say I'm anti fucking
Yeah.
like I'm anti stupid shit, right? Because I agree with that. To say I'm anti SJW, I'm anti social justice. Take a shit on civil rights. Take a shit on gay marriage. Take a shit on everything else you want to fucking take a shit on, and don't come at me with that bullshit because I will not.
Knock. I didn't mean to wind you up again. I mean, but I'm sorry.
Guys.
But the point,
Guys, we're on a specific topic right now.
I understand that, but
and we need to start wrapping it up.
The conversation that died down. I'm going to finish my point, okay? And it was just a quick point to say. Maybe what Vegeta and them are talking about is they're conflating an entire ideology or an entire group with specific actors. You know what I mean? And I'm just trying to steel man them a little bit that maybe they're not saying they're anti-social justice, but there's some people in the social justice movement that maybe that
I would agree with that. I would agree with that. But to label yourself as anti-SJW. I don't want that label around me. I just don't. It's not who I am. It's not who I've portrayed since I've started this shit. I've always portrayed myself against that. So this should not be as any surprise. But let's get back on topic because we do need to start winding it down.
Yeah, you can handle that stuff. We can handle that stuff after the show.
Yeah, like I did want to bring this back to talking about this because, there's a number of people that are saying that we're saying it's a feature of the entire atheist community. What we are talking about is toxicity within the atheist community.
Yeah,
in the same way that folkism is not a facet of the entire polytheistic community, but Callan and I are working together to call out folkism in places like the AFA. So too, being anti-SJW, quote unquote, anti, civil rights activism, being, combative with people who are in no way attempting to convert you. These sorts of toxic behaviors, they are like part of the community. They happen in the community, and it's the job of those who want to see themselves as not being bad faith actors to work alongside those that are being hit by it to stop this stuff. That's what this conversation is about. It's why these sorts of things are non-productive. So bringing everything back, like, it's not even just Naka that you don't necessarily want to associate with it. It's that this sort of thing doesn't actually have a justification that I've ever seen, you know, within scientific consensus, and yet this is behavior that is being carried over, which brings everything back to latent Christianity.
It is the exact thing that this conversation is about. This is it exactly. This is why I stopped watching Atheist on YouTube for so long, and then I was so surprised that there was this other fucking community. I don't want to push anybody away, but I will be myself. And this whole anti-SJW bullshit, call out bad ideas. Don't fucking sit here and say that me standing up for the rights of Native Americans or me standing up for the rights of gay people or whatever the fuck it is I do is anti-SJW, because it's not. It's called equality. If you're not on board with that, I don't know why you're even here. I don't. I can't understand it. Why have you been here all this time when that's what I've spoken of? I don't get it.
So coming back to things, I'm curious actually if you've dealt with any of the like anti-feminist, the racist side of the atheist community at all. If you've witnessed it, like I know that in your role as moderator, I'm sure you've seen it.
I'm pretty new to the community, so I don't like to the online community. So I don't think I've run into this quite as much as everybody else who has been here longer. I mean, I've run into, as far as being in a moderator position, a handful of atheists who tend to be male presenting, having an issue with a female presenting moderator actually modding them when they step out of line.
Yeah, I mean, let's be fucking honest. This whole anti-feminism bullshit, I mean, this is latent Christianity. Women aren't as good as men, so shut the fuck up. No, fuck that. Fuck that. I mean, seriously, I'm not down with it. You know, like, this is bullshit. This is seriously, it is serious bullshit. And I'm not going to stand for it. I just won't. That is the toxicity that I see. And if you're going to go in that direction, you're not willing to have an open conversation with people. You're just not. Please come and change my fucking mind. Please do. You're not going to, but please. I'm sorry, Witch, go ahead. It's stupid. It's just stupid.
I've run into, I think, 2 examples of very strange arguments for racism that are somehow wrapped up in biology,
Race realism,
and genetics, and I don't even understand how they got there.
You were roboting really hard right there.
Oh, sorry.
Those are the race realists.
She wasn't roboting for me.
Oh, then it must be my connection. I apologize.
Yeah, she wasn't roboting for me.
Those arguments coming from atheists, and it just, I don't understand how you get in a position where that's your viewpoint on things. It seems very odd to me.
So,
Jim Majors makes a really good point. I'll go ahead and show it for everybody. There are certain forms of feminism that I'm against, but that doesn't make me any less of a feminist. The same applies for certain forms of social justice. That is what I'm saying. There are extreme positions. There are things you should be against. When you label yourself anti all of it, well, then you're labeling yourself anti-freedom. You're labeling yourself above others. I stand against that. I mean, it's pure and simple. It's as simple as that. If you want to point out bad ideas, fucking do that. The moment you start painting with that broad brush, like I have done against Christians many times, so I see that shit. What I'm saying is this: I have not hid it. I have not hid that shit the entire time I've been on YouTube. I tried and I failed. This isn't a surprise. Call out bad ideas. But the moment you say I'm anti-social justice, you are saying a thing about yourself that you might not mean. And I stand against that. Can't be any
Naka,
clearer.
I'd like to give AR, because AR actually recently came out as trans, and she and I talked a little bit before this actually happened. Do you want to share some of the reasons that you were really scared to come out, like with the community and stuff, the experiences that you've seen and had since then?
Like, the whole reason why, like, I've been quiet about it, I started, like, realizing it more and more come November. I opened up to Objectively Subjective, Just Maddie, and then they and I aren't really on speaking terms anymore, but that's a story for another day. They received a lot of hate after they came out, and like a lot of people that I thought were like good people in the community ended up not being so much. Then the rationality rules thing happened, and
yeah, I remember that.
Then I noticed on Twitter more and more of these like little segments of the atheist community that were very anti-trans, and like I've been making atheist contents for quite a while at that point, and like jeez, I was worried that maybe like some of those people would be in my audience, or that some of those people might, when I finally decided to like come out to my audience and like everybody else in the world, they'd, I don't know, watch me under like a magnifying glass or something like that and like poke at like every little thing that I did wrong, and then I'd end up getting like the same type of like hate Callan gets on YouTube and like
well, and on Twitter. Yeah,
that's what I meant. I said YouTube, I meant Twitter. You probably get it on YouTube as well, but I did
actually. Yeah, especially when we made our response video to RR, which is among our first videos. Yeah, and some particular atheist saw that we had talked about him. Mm-hmm. Yeah, we got some hate.
Twitter is definitely a cesspool. X, I'm pretty sure that's you, because you're usually the one using the Utah Outcast handle.
What's up, X?
Twitter is definitely a cesspool.
I don't think that X is toxic. I think that X is very open, honestly. So what up, X?
As I started like when I finally had like the courage to come out and stuff, though, Callan helped me a lot, and I had other conversations that made me realize that like if I did have like part of that audience, then you know it's better I don't have them.
Well, I mean, you and I talked extensively too about like your concerns with, you know, being worried about coming on here and, you know, worried about misgendering and that sort of thing. You and I had a long conversation about like how to avoid gendering and that sort of thing until you were ready.
Yeah, and
we did have a conversation about that.
You know, this speaks to it. Like you should be afraid, AR, to be who you are in the community you belong to, and yet you had these fears. I'm sure you had fears coming to me about it before you went public, and
I did need a little bit of a push. I wish a couple of people in that conversation weren't there at the time, but
you know,
that was okay.
I'm so glad you did come to me, and you know, atheists, we need to make ourselves more accessible. You know, don't close ourselves off. And, you know, like I've dealt with some bad fucking Christians. I've dealt with some of the worst Christians. You know, like not all of them are those people. Not all atheists are bad people. A lot of atheists are free thinkers. I'm an atheist here. I've got 3 pagans on my channel right now. Right? You know, like we don't have to be toxic. We can still be open-minded and still learn and grow and be human beings together and call out bad ideas. If you're an anti-SJW calling out bad ideas, I'm for you. I just don't like that label. I fucking hate that label because guess what? I am a social justice warrior. It's what I do. It's everything I do. It's what I do politically. It's everything I stand for. Equality. Every human being is the same. Callan is the same as me. Ali is the same as me. Witch is the same as me. They're not atheists, but they're humans and they're logical. And that's what matters to me. And, I'm not going to care if you're an old friend, like this is who I've been. Maybe you haven't been paying attention, but this is who I am.
So we're getting to the last 10 minutes of the stream, it looks like. So, question, Naka, you said you wanted it to go for about 2 hours. Do you want me to start doing wrap-ups?
Yes, we need to wrap it up. And I put the Discord once again in the chat. Please, anybody feel free to come in, talk about this, open discussion. Even if I called you out personally, come in and address it to me personally. I don't want shit talking. I will say it to your face and I will let you defend yourself. That's what I'm about. I will go back and look at this chat. I know it's been contentious. But yes, please come join us on Discord, have this conversation, continue this conversation. And this is going to go on in the future because I think it's important. We need to make allies and we need to recognize those that are willing to fight with us. I'm not going to deny you just because you have a God belief. I'm going to deny you if you have some bad beliefs. That's simple.
Might I make a suggestion? Allie, you said you're going to go to Discord for a while after this too, right?
Yeah, for a little while.
All right. Well, I'd like to make the suggestion that since it has the potential of getting contentious, that Allie continue to moderate even once we get to Discord.
Well, all moderators in Discord will have full moderator powers. So,
I think he's asking me to verbally moderate to make sure that if people,
I'm cool with that.
If things get contentious, yeah, I'm cool with that. At least while I'm still there.
I'm
I won't be there forever because I gotta go to sleep. So like an hour, maybe two.
But that damn thing called sleep.
All right, so I'm gonna bring everything. We've got just a little under 10 minutes left, so I'm gonna bring everything to a close. Just like before, I'm going to have everybody go, and then I'll introduce myself and plug the channels that I'm involved in, and we will say goodnight and head off to Discord. So, Callan, final thoughts and channel plugs.
My final thoughts: fuck imperialism, destroy colonialism, and support native rights. And the channels I'm involved in are Polyology. And my Twitter is at Aresprit. You probably won't be able to spell it. But yeah, there you go.
Actually, if you want to find Callan's Twitter, I actually tagged Naka in my post about being live on here. So she's actually the first person tagged. It says, come join her and I on Nakasuchi's channel discussing atheist toxicity. So if you go digging through his mentions, then you'll be able to find us.
And I think it's been successful because we've had a shit ton.
All right. So, Witch, your turn. Channel plugs, discussion, any final thoughts?
I'm part of the channel What the Craft with my husband, who's an atheist. What we're doing there is trying to find common ground between atheists and pagans. I'm not a debater. I generally do conversation, so this is all new to me. And honestly, I think if we just engage in conversation with each other charitably, we can make a lot more progress than going at each other aggressively.
Good final thoughts. All right, John Peterson. Final thoughts, channel plugs?
Yeah, this is a good discussion. And looks like it might continue in Discord after this a little bit. Yeah, I have a channel, The Amateur Conversationalist. I usually do a stream on Sunday afternoons. Go check out last Sunday, Nakasuchi was on, and we talked about his time as a slam poet. I thought that was a really good conversation. I also do a stream on the Great Debate Community channel on Saturday nights. And possibly this Wednesday, if not this Wednesday, the following Wednesday, I'm going to start doing once a week on Nakasuchi's channel while he's at work. So be looking for that.
Yep. hopefully that will start this Wednesday. So John, start booking.
So I tried to hit the unmute and I accidentally clicked word on my bottom bar, so that's why it took me a sec. Sorry for the dead air, guys. AR, it's your turn. Channel plugs, final thoughts, anything else you've got to say?
Yeah, I just saw something in the chat that like struck me as like, what?
We can continue the conversation from the chat when we move to Discord. This is final
Yeah, we
thoughts.
can. So, final thoughts. Obviously, I feel like I need to reinforce this idea because there's been a lot of like confusion in the chat. We're not talking about the atheist community as a whole. We're talking about like certain toxic elements that we see in certain segments of the atheist community. More often than not, they are centered around like certain fan bases of very specific content creators. But for respect's sake, we're not making any names. I feel like a lot of this toxicity, like I was saying earlier, stems out of like the anti-feminist movement here on YouTube from the atheist and skeptic community. Like there's a lot of overlap in those communities, and like I said, I've seen going through like people's like liked videos playlists where certain people will like some very yikesy, like borderline Nazi content, including things like the Great Replacement Theory video from Lauren Southern. It's definitely something that exists. And if you're on Twitter for any amount of time, you'll definitely see it. Just remember, we're not talking about the community as a whole. There's a lot of great communities out there. Cirrus's community, for instance, Mr. Atheist communities, for instance.
Mr. Atheist is also a wonderful person.
He really is. If you look around, you'll find positive communities out there. Some of them are just a little more yikesy than others. It's almost like a spectrum. Let's just put it that way. And
right, you want to plug your channel?
Yeah. So I'm the Atheist Rationale. I'm currently taking still in the middle of kind of a mental health break. I wasn't really planning on coming on today, but I did anyways because this is a topic I'm like really passionate about and something I've experienced myself, especially being in watching YouTube atheist content specifically for going on 10 years now. You can find me at the Atheist Rationale on YouTube. I do live streams calling out the hate that you'll see coming out of like religious fundamentalism. I'm working on making more leftist content, but I gotta fill up the brain with some knowledge and some reading materials before I dive really into that. And you can find me on Twitter as the Atheist R, and I did post a link to my Discord. I think I'll post that again right now. And yeah, that's me.
All right, and so I was the moderator. I go by Aliakai in the community overall. I happen to be one of the organizers for the Collective U channel on the lefty side, and one of the co-hosts as of recently on Polyology, so check both of those out. Collective U just actually got 2 new animators, and we're incredibly excited. Gaelic Knox has just joined our team from Cirrus's side of things, and we also just got another animator named Permello who did some fantastic work for us. So I'm incredibly excited. It looks like our first videos are going to be getting out a lot faster than we thought. So if you get a chance to check those out, there's some great content coming down the pipeline.
Mm-hmm.
And thank you again, Naka, for having me. As always, I'm so grateful that I got to be a part of the way your channel transitioned, and I really enjoy moderating for you. Like, this is a lot of fun, even when it gets a little crazy.
Yeah, thank you. This was a crazy stream. To reiterate what AR was saying, this was never an intention to paint all atheists as something they're not. This is simply a conversation about toxicity. This is simply a conversation about how certain elements of the community herds together and attacks people nonstop. And I don't want to be the Christian I used to be. I don't want to other people. I don't want to say because you're this, that means you're that. I want to base my reactions to people upon their actions. I want them to come in, defend their faith, and if they have bad ideals, I will call them out. I want to understand that human beings are human beings, and that I'm not as smart as I think I am, and that I'm not the end-all, be-all answer to everything. I am no longer the raging atheist. I am not. I'm Nakatsuchi. I'm trying to find some truth here. That is why I was willing, this conversation was my idea tonight. I wanted to have this conversation because I see toxicity amongst atheists. And I think that if you're an atheist, you are able to overcome some serious indoctrinations in your life. You were able to overcome that. And you have this ability that a lot of human beings don't. You can see the truth, but sometimes it has to be thrown at you. And that's what this conversation was tonight, is to look at ourselves, to see our faults and try to be better than the religious people we were. Let's not do the same shit. Please. Let's be human together. Let's be the conversation together. But let's not be hateful. And that's where I stand. I'm going to give you merit where it's deserved. I'm going to respect you as a human being. And I'm going to combat the ideas I see as bad. And I'm going to do it pretty much as I've done it always, as that raging ass motherfucking little bear. And I really appreciate everybody coming here and having this conversation. It will go into Discord. So we're going to wrap it up. We're going to give it like 20 seconds because StreamYard has a bit of a delay, but we're going to wrap it up. So y'all have a good night, and we'll see you soon.
Have a good night, everyone.